Hi everyone, my name is Maddie, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my January wrap-up. So for my wrap-ups this year, I am going to continue doing them basically as I have been. I'm going to do my stats at the beginning and then I'm going to go through all the books I read in the order I read them. However, I am going to try and keep it relatively brief. I feel like sometimes I go on for a really long time in my wrap-ups. So I am sure for some of these books I will go on for a long time, but I mean some of them I've vlogged separately, and going forward I am hoping to be doing weekly vlogs from February onwards. So hopefully there will also be all of those thoughts covering these books. But for today, I'll just very quickly hold up the stack of books I read. This is what I read in January plus 3 ebooks, which I will also be talking about. So pretty good reading month. I'm really happy with getting through 8 books, even though 3 of them were novellas. I did not think I'd get through that much in January at all because I knew I had a lot going on. So I'm really, really proud of myself. I feel like I did well to keep up with my reading. But before we get into specific books, let's do stats. Starting off with the total number of books I read, which was 8, bringing my goal for the year of 2021 to 8 out of 52 books, which is really good and has me way ahead of schedule, which I'm thrilled about. In terms of pages, I read a total of 2,293 pages, which works out as 74 pages per day, below my overall aim of 100 a day, but at the same time that aim has been massively not the focus at the moment. I would love to get back to that average as the year goes on, but I 100% appreciate that right now that's not feasible. 72 average a day is brilliant, though it's so sporadic. Like Monday to Thursday, Monday to Friday I read basically nothing, and then Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday I read like 3 books or 2 books or something. So that's kind of the strategy I've been taking at the moment, and it's actually working quite well for me, but I am hoping to start factoring in some reading in the evenings a little bit more going forwards. And then that makes the average length of book I read 292 pages, which is pretty good. It's shorter than I would have anticipated considering a lot of the books I read are over 400, but that is because I did read 3 novellas, one that was 30 odd pages, one that was 80 odd, and then one that was like 200. So that's obviously going to bring the average down. In terms of the intended audience of the books I read, I did read 3 adult, 4 YA, and then 1 that's kind of other, which is a non-fiction book, so I don't really know where to class it. I would guess adult really, but I don't know, it feels weird calling it adult. So yeah, that's a little bit more YA proportionally than normal, but it's because I read all 4 books in a specific YA series, which you can actually watch the vlog for here, the Fever Week series by Victoria Lee, though I will be talking about them more briefly here as well. So YA a bit higher than normal, but not particularly different. Again, my average of roughly 50-50. In terms of genre, I did read 6 fantasy books, so I'm going to kind of subdivide that as 2 fantasy books and then 4 dystopian. I guess I could probably call that category like sci-fi fantasy instead of just fantasy. I then read 1 contemporary book and 1 non-fiction book. It is seeming like I might be reading a non-fiction quite regularly this year. I'm definitely reading 1 in February, so we'll see if that continues, because that is a category I did not anticipate having on more than 1 wrap-up. And then finally, star rating. I did have 3 5-star reads, which is obviously a brilliant way to kick off the year. I then had 2 4-stars, 1 3-star, 1 2-star, and 1 unrated book, which is the non-fiction, because I don't tend to rate non-fictions. So that's it for the stats. Let's get into the books. As always, I'm going in the order that I read them in, which means we are starting with Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. This is a non-fiction. It is all about sort of mistakes. It says marginal gains and the secrets of performance, but it actually is really interesting in talking about how people take feedback, whether people will look for feedback and the improvements that can be made from that. And it has a lot of discussion of sort of the fear of being told you've made a mistake, and will that make you look bad? Will it make you look like you're bad at your job? And so people don't report mistakes because they think they'll get in trouble, but then the mistakes will happen again and again to other people. Whereas if they're reported, it then won't happen to someone else because you can learn from other people's mistakes. It was really, really interesting. It was very well delivered. I loved the case studies. I actually quite liked that the case studies were come back to in lots of different examples, so you could tie it all together. However, by about 2/3 of the way through this book, it was getting very, very, very repetitive because it was the exact same case studies and the exact same points being made over and over. And I think that is the thing a lot of non-fictions do. They try so hard to be like a full 300 pages that they do repeat themselves quite a lot. So could have done with being a bit shorter, but overall definitely an interesting read, and I would recommend it for anyone interested in this sort of thing. But that's all I will say on that. I didn't rate it, so there you go. That's what I need to say on that. The second book I read in the month was One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I don't have a physical copy of this. I did read it on ebook because I was sent an e-arc of it by the publisher, so thank you so much to them for providing me with a copy. I'm gonna try not to go on about this book for too long. First thing, it was 5 stars, no question, one of my new favourite books. I was really nervous going into it because I loved Red, White and Royal Blue so much. I do love Red, White and Royal Blue so much. I've read it multiple times, it means the world to me. And I was just like, can anything live up to that? And although I will say that I think Red, White and Royal Blue did slightly pip it for me, One Last Stop was absolutely phenomenal. As a very quick sort of synopsis for it, it does follow August, who is moving to New York City for university, and she's kind of dropped out of university a few times. She's kind of moved around a lot, doesn't feel like she can find sort of her place. She's quite cynical, she's quite pessimistic, kind of doesn't believe in love and all of this, until she meets this girl called Jane on the subway, and all of a sudden maybe she has to reassess if she does believe in love. And it's adorable, and it turns out that Jane is actually trapped on the train. She is from the 70s. I think it's either 70s or 80s, and every single time I go to talk about this book, I cannot remember, even though I look it up. One of the 2 decades is when Jane is from, and she's trapped on this subway, and so it's a really interesting sort of discussion of how different LGBTQ plus rights were back then, and how different the life was for her, and just, oh, it's just phenomenal. Obviously it's heart-wrenching because they're trying to get her back to her own time, but then her and August don't get to be together, and there's just, it's beautiful. It is truly a beautiful book. The place where Casey McQuiston absolutely excels past anything is her characters. Her characters are just phenomenal at every single point. I love them so much. I just connect with them on so many different levels and in so many different ways, and I just have the best time reading about them. She also does a absolutely beautiful job with found family. The found family vibes in this book were just the best. August, as I said, is a bit cynical and kind of doesn't have that like friendship group, and moves into this house with a group of people who just take her in and make her their family, and it's so cute and just amazing, and I really do love it. And as I said, Casey McQuiston does this perfectly. I also, small thing, I love how long Casey McQuiston's books are, considering they're contemporary. I've listed it as contemporary because realistically it's a contemporary story with a small sci-fi twist, but the point of it is not the sci-fi, the point is the contemporary story. So I'm calling it a contemporary book. But normally contemporary books kind of may push 300 pages, but they don't tend to be longer than that. Hers are always over 400. Like this was 430 pages. I think Red, White and Royal Blue was a similar length. And I love it, genuinely. I love that her books are so long because none of it feels wasted. She just spends all this time on character development and people, and I do really truly adore her books, and this was a phenomenal book, and one I'm very excited to reread at some point, and I'm sure I will be doing so possibly around its release in June. I know when I read Red, White and Royal Blue, I reread it within the same year, and I would not be remotely surprised if this happens with this one as well, especially when I get a physical copy, because I'm going to want to put tabs in it, and obviously I've only got my e-copy at the moment, so yeah, I don't really know what else to say other than it's phenomenal. The story was so clever and so intricate. Ooh, another thing I really liked was August and her mum and that relationship. I won't say too much about it because it's quite a big part of the plot, but that was done, I thought, really well and was absolutely fascinating to read about, so that was another just extra bonus, extra story going on in the book. Just generally brilliant, as you would expect from Casey McQuiston. But yeah, safe to say after reading this that Casey McQuiston is definitely one of my favourite authors. Their books are just phenomenal. I love them so much. As I said, I was worried reading a second book from them, but really glad to know that on a second book, I love their books just as much, and I love their writing and their characters just as much, and cannot wait to know what they'll be writing and putting out next. The third book I read in the month was The Raven Tower by Anne Leckie, and I gave this 2 stars. This was not it. I read the first 100 pages of this in December and planned to read the whole thing, and then got distracted and didn't get around to it. This was the FAES and Gaze pick, and after reading those first 100 pages, I was 100% content to never pick it up again. I did, because as I said, it was a book club pick and I needed to discuss it in a live, so I needed to read the rest of it, but I was fully content to not pick this up again after I'd read the first 100 pages and then put it down for a few days. It did not draw me in at all. I did not understand 90% of this book. Honestly, I do not know what the hell was going on through most of it. As a bit of a synopsis, I don't know any characters' names, but this does follow Iolo, I think, who is trans, the trans main character, which is, you know, nice rep. And in this, they are sort of, I guess, a servant? I can't think of a better word. Like a companion almost to this quite powerful person who's going, and he thinks he's going to be taking over like almost this religious position of authority. But when he gets there, someone else has already taken it. His uncle's already taken it. And there's like this mystery, there's magic, there's gods, there's a lot going on. And what I found is the first 250 pages, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who was who. I didn't care. Then for about 100 pages, I really liked it actually. It got really interesting and I really enjoyed it. And then the last 50, I went back to not having a clue what was going on and it just wrapped up too quickly and I don't know how it ended and I just don't know. So overall, I gave it 2 stars because, I mean, 2/3 of the book I really didn't enjoy. And until that 100-page chunk where I enjoyed it, I would have DNF'd this book at any point without a second thought, and I don't DNF very often. So that says quite a lot. Just not great. I don't really have other thoughts. There is a live show if you want to watch that where we did go into it in more detail, and that was more recently after I'd read it. It's been a few weeks now and I've had a lot of other stuff going on, so this has not been top of my brain. But yeah, this was not it. The next book I read, and I might kind of talk about the next 4 kind of together because they are all related, but the next one is The Fever King by Victoria Lee. This is a YA dystopian story. As a quick overview, which I won't give for every book because they're all in the same series, this follows a slightly futuristic America, like 100 years from now. And in this slightly futuristic America, there has been a virus called magic, and magic kills almost everyone infected by it. However, if you do survive, you have magic in your veins, and therefore you have magical abilities. And this has caused a huge divide in the country. Obviously, the whole place is kind of war-torn because it's been big virus, big pandemic, everyone's really struggling. But then on top of that, some people are really scared of witchings, which is what a person is called once they've got magic. And so there's been sort of big wars going on trying to eradicate witchings, and the area we focus on is Carolina, I think, and it's what's referred to as a witching state. So they're allowed to be witchings there. And like refugees from other areas. There's so many different topics discussed in this book. There's all sorts of things about immigration and refugees, about race, about sexuality, just so many topics discussed so well and so interestingly. I adore this book. I gave it 5 stars, I've not said that, but I gave the sequel, which we'll get to in a minute, 5 stars as well. But I absolutely adore this book. This was a reread for me. I had read it before and 5-starred it the first time. I was nervous I wouldn't this time, but honestly, I think I enjoyed it even more this time. The biggest thing I always say about this book is it's just mind-blowing in that you do not know who to trust, you don't know what's going on, you just don't have a clue at any point, and I find that fascinating, especially because it's not written in first person, but it's very much from one character's perspective. And so when you're reading it, all you know is what they know. They know nothing, so you know nothing, and it's great. I know a lot of people don't like this book, but I personally really, really do. I think it's brilliantly done, and I cannot wait to read more from Victoria Lee in future, though I think their next book is not dystopian. But I love this. I think it's phenomenal. I think the characters are amazing. Everyone's queer, which, you know, bonus. I love the relationship in this book. It's so complex, it's so interesting. It's a new favourite series for me. I genuinely love it. And so following on from that, the sequel, The Electric Air, which I also gave 5 stars, as I said. I won't say too much about this because obviously it very much carries on from what I just said, and I can't give you a synopsis because it's the second book. But I will just say I have massive respect for Victoria Lee for how different the tone of this book was while still having the same effect. In that the first one is very fast-paced, and that's why your brain is so blown. You're finding all this information out, you don't know who to trust, you don't know what's going on. Whereas in this, you kind of know who to trust by the start of this book, but you're still so torn because so many people are morally grey and acting so, not even poorly, just not how you want them to, and you don't know who's like allied with who, and there's definitely confusion there. But this one was much slower paced. It's a bit longer. This one's like 450 pages. Yeah, almost 450 exactly. And there's a lot of breathing room in this book, but I think that was really useful and felt very realistic that there's this like, when you're discovering anything, it's almost like breathless. There's no space in the first book. And then when you're kind of trying to get that through your head and act on it, You need that thinking and breathing space, and I loved that tone change in this book, and I thought it was done exceedingly well. 5 stars again, as I said, new favourite series. So the next 2 books I read are, again, related to that series. I did read the 2 novellas from that series, which are The Stars and Everything in Between and The Traitor's Crown. The Traitor's Crown is a prequel to the whole series, and The Stars and Everything in Between is a sequel to the whole series. So Traitor's Crown comes before, Stars and Everything in Between comes after. And I'll quickly talk about these in the order I read them. I read Stars and Everything Between first because it was only 35 pages and I just wanted to get it done. And that does follow, I'm not going to say which characters, but 2 of the main characters from the core series. And it's just a really cute, happy little novella, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It didn't have like enough content or like impact for it to be a 5-star. It was just cute. Very glad it existed though. One of the comments I made in my vlog, I said this already, but if you want to see in-depth thoughts about these books, I did vlog my whole experience of reading them, and you can watch that. So I have really in-depth current thoughts on them if you want to see that. But one thing I said at the end of The Electric Air was the fact that I felt like it needed just another like 20 pages. It all wrapped up really quick, and I just felt like there was a tiny bit extra I needed to feel settled with the ending. That novella provided that really nicely. It just shows the characters after everything's gone down, and you just feel really settled in it. And so I really appreciated that. So I gave it 4 stars. Then The Traitor's Crown, I only gave like 3.5. I didn't really like it. It was about 80 pages. It was a bit longer, and it does follow the antagonist of the series, but a prequel kind of showing how he came to be the antagonist that he is. But it didn't do as much for me as I hoped it would. He actually just slightly annoyed me, if I'm honest. I didn't get that invested in it. I don't know why. The story didn't really take me. It didn't do much for me. I feel like for some reason the character just didn't really interest me. I don't have too much to say on it though. It was only 80 pages, and again, I've already given my thoughts on it, but it was good. It just didn't do that much for me, I guess. And then I feel this is going to be a really short wrap up, but on to my last book that I read in the month. The Black Sides of Heaven by Neon Young. I literally just picked that up and then forgot what book it was. This was the January pick for FAES and Gaze, and so I was trying to read it before the end of January because I've been failing to do that with most of them. I keep reading them in the wrong month. I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. I'm going to try and summarize it, but don't hold out much hope because it's another confusing one. This follows 2 twins, Akia and Makoya, and they are raised in a world where you aren't gendered until you're maybe like 16, 17, 18, at which point you decide what gender you would like to be confirmed as, and you live at that point as that gender, and then you have like gendered language used to you, your body gets changed to fit your gender that you want. And it's a really interesting concept, but unfortunately I guess that wasn't much the focus. In terms of actual plot, really hard to describe. It was just sort of the story of these 2 people and lots of stuff going down. I don't know how to describe it, especially with it being such a short book for fear of spoilers. Yeah, it's just like a rebellion is growing. The twins' mother is like very involved and on the wrong side of things. There's a lot going down, and that's my criticism of this book. I love novellas. I love novellas. Tor novellas are some of my favourite books. So many of them are my favourites. This needed to be 400 pages. This should not have been 230. I just genuinely, it really shouldn't have. It should have been longer. I think this would have been phenomenal had it been longer. Especially because the society with the whole gendering and everything was so interesting and just never spoken about because there wasn't space to do world building in this book. And like it was a type of magic called slack. Never explained. Used in big fight scenes, never explained, meaning I couldn't follow the fight scenes, which was really disappointing because I wanted to love this book, and I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. But yeah, it was slightly disappointing in that so much more world building would have made such a difference. And also, this follows a huge time span. This follows like 30, 40 years following these children, if not longer. And you see such small individual snapshots and snippets that it kind of skips past all the important stuff as well, and it didn't feel like it flowed together, didn't feel like it connected. And this will sound like, why did I give it 4 stars? I loved the writing, I loved the world, I really liked both Akia and Makoya as well as some other side characters, and especially towards the end, once I'd really found my footing in the world, which was not helped by the way it was written, it was really, really interesting. So you know, lots of pluses as well, and I'm definitely going to be picking up the sequel. Now that I am into the world, I am really, really keen to carry on and see if I enjoy the sequel more. I have heard people not enjoy the sequel as much, so I'm nervous, but we're going to give it a go. But yeah, overall good. Again, there is a live show. I feel like this whole video is just me plugging other things. I'm sorry. But there is a live show for this one as well. We spoke about this book for about 30 minutes and then just went on a tangent because we didn't feel we had anything else to say. But there's 30 minutes of us discussing this book if you want to see that. It was good. Very intrigued by the sequel, but this didn't live up to what I hoped. The one thing I will say actually though, a couple other things, side characters I loved. One was Sanjay, who was phenomenal. He's one of the love interests. I loved him. He was hilarious. Maybe slightly manipulative in like a bad way, but for some reason it just made me laugh instead of feel he was evil. Not quite sure why, but I really liked him. And then I can't remember how to pronounce it. The pronunciation is literally detailed in the book, which I love, but I cannot remember it. I'm gonna say Yongzhao, but I think I am wrong and I'm really, really sorry, but I don't know where in the book it was detailed, the pronunciation, and I cannot for the life of me remember it now. But I loved him as well. He was a really interesting character and again, had a very interesting relationship. He was just great. The relationships in this book were phenomenal. That is a massive selling point for this book. They weren't a focus, but they were done seriously well. So overall, enjoyed it. Do want to read the sequel, but it wasn't quite what I hoped it would be, I guess. So that is this very short wrap up. I don't know why I've gone through all of this so quickly today, but there we go. We're having a bit of a shorter video. But that's everything I read. As I said, overall good reading month. February is already going really well because I'm filming this a little bit late. I'm sorry. But that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Please let me know down in the comments what you've read. If you had a good reading month in January, I'd love to know if you read any of these books. Did you like them? Leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. And then links to the book clubs I've mentioned as well as read-alongs and everything else I host. I'll link down below in the description if you want to take part in anything, as are all my other social medias if you want to connect with me in any other way. But that is it for this video, so bye, and I'll see you in the next one.